Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the show, then you'll have to go and subscribe to Nathan Oakley 1980, as this is a pre-record, just to get that in for all the people in the chat. If you'd like to join the community debate, then go to nathanoakley.com and check out the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. Now, we are joined by a whole bunch of people. As I say, we are in the pre-recorded stage of the pre-show before the main live debate, so while I set up for the main live show, I'll pass over to them, and you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I do exactly that.
Reality. A picture of a photon, a picture of all, it's just a picture.
Oh, there we go again. There we go again. Denying that we live in a world of matter, denying reality, denying that matter exists. We have to tie into some consciousness.
Solipsism.
Can I make a comment? If you can hear me with my cracky voice.
Right.
Okay. One of the things I think we're kind of running into tension with, sorry, my little one's decided to start speaking when I'm trying to speak, is our, we're also, Slick is always talking about his experience, but there is always a shared experience, and also there's a shared reality.
Your microphone is
part of our, is that better?
I hear you.
She was all over. Okay. Yeah, my voice is also bad. I may just have to let it go.
Your mic is really hot.
I'm sorry.
It's like you're chewing your mic.
Yeah.
It can I
that
give you
better?
Chocolate,
Is that-
chocolate, you sound beautiful, man.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely
Say
day!
that again.
You sound beautiful now. Your mic sounds awesome.
To me
Oh,
or chocolate?
it doesn't
Can you hear
usually
me now?
sound
Is
like
it
this,
better?
right?
No, not
You
like
sounded
this.
better,
You
yeah.
sound very clear.
Well, some of it's my voice. I'll just have to do it later. Sorry.
It's all good,
Wow.
Paul. It's all good.
Can I give an example of something?
You
please?
sound really good, chocolate, really sexy.
Uh,
I'm serious. It sounds awesome.
Oh,
I love
alrighty
it.
then. Well, I'm not
Let's-
using my Bluetooth today, so.
Let's say,
Ah.
if I may, I just thought of something. Nathan throws this is an example. Nathan throws a New Year's Eve party. Everyone on this panel right now shows up to Nathan's New Year's Eve party. We have cell phones. We take photos, videos of that party. The following year, 10th Man throws a New Year's Eve party, invites the same panel members that were on the last party. And I say, hey, I just happen to have my same camera. I got pictures of last year's New Year's party and video from it. Let's look at it. Would someone say, please, that actually means I can't prove it?
No, but I don't care about your pictures of your party. If you want to show me your kid or your dog, I don't care. But if you're going to talk about the shape of the Earth and prove that Earth is flat or sphere or anything like that, it's not going to cut it. Logical
I see.
deductions are not going to cut it.
I see. The camera takes a.
I believe that your
Direct-
cute kid
I'm
barfed
trying to
all over
answer you.
itself during your party.
Listen, the camera takes a perfect facsimile of my child, but when I point it to the Earth, it lies.
It
That's
can
nonsense.
lie. Yes, we are currently being
It
deceived.
doesn't lie.
If your kid
The
barfed
camera
on itself
doesn't
and
lie.
you just poured pea soup on it, I don't care either way.
what?
What is this guy
But
talking
if you
about?
show me a
ridiculous.
picture of the Earth, then yes, if you tell me there's a curve or there's not a curve, then I'm going to dispute it because that's what matters to me. I don't care about your kid. I don't care if it's real or not. So if you tell me it's
You've
real,
left the
that's fine,
world-
great.
You have left the world of reality when you say the camera will lie about a picture of the Earth, but take the correct one of your kid.
Okay.
That's not what he's saying at all, but
Well, how do you know what he's saying? Don't speak for him.
Shout out to Colin Turner
He
for
can
the
speak
super
for
chat.
me if he wants.
thank you.
Oh, okay. Great.
I'd like to try it. See if I could. Can you guys hear me now? Is it better? Really kind
Little
of
better.
quiet it down for a
Little
second.
better. Little better, yeah.
Okay, sorry. It was some of it's
Maybe
my
you need
voice,
to-
so I've got to.
Maybe you
What's
need to
that?
go do a GoFundMe for a better microphone as well.
I've got one, but if you knew my situation, you'd understand why I use my Bluetooth a lot more. But let me see if I can get this out before Lily decides to go crazy again.
But there's
you know,
some really
part of-
short
part
range
of-
mics. Sorry, there's some really short range mics that don't pick up sound over distance. Those could be really useful in your situation.
I understand. But let me get this thought out before we, I don't want to get too far on that because I want to get my thought out. We're all talking about, we have this, reality that we live in at some level. And I think part of this discussion is trying to determine what this reality is. And yes, I think there is a subjective component to our experience of this reality. We're trying to figure out what is objective, something that we can know, say, okay, this is true, and I think you have to make logical inferences from the world that you live in. You can't get away from that. And we look at the evidence, which means pictures, whether it means my own experience, whether it be whatever it may be. We're trying to say, okay, what is the world that we live in? What's the logical consistencies? What is it? And we always share this reality at a large level, and I don't agree with Flat Earther that you can't know. I think you can know it. I think you can figure it out. Okay, she decided to go bad again. But I think that's part of this discussion is trying to figure out what the objective reality is, and instead of trying to, okay, I'm gone. Sorry guys. I hope you got my point.
I got it. No worries.
I got your point, but I'm not doing that. I'm not trying to concern myself with objective reality.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to join the community debate, then go to nathanoakley.com and check out the Flat Earth Debate Forum. If you'd like to support this channel, as Colin Turner's just done before the live show even started, thank you very much to you, Colin Turner, then you can smash the Super Chat or hit the Patreon or PayPal or crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, then simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, and all those other good places. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now, we are joined by Slick James Johnson, Paul, Flatten Earth, Ebon Kim, Chocolate Sane, P. Mars, and Arwin. Good to have you all.
Good
Hello.
afternoon.
Hello?
Good
Hello.
morning.
Morning. Any signs of
Hello.
Earth curve? Lots of discussion about personal issues amongst the panel members, but just to get it back onto Flat Earth, let's run through the housekeeping quickly. Any signs of Earth-based curvature?
It depends on the picture.
Depends on the picture.
Doesn't depend on the picture.
That's good. That was
Just
good.
no.
Classic.
That
Obstruction.
was funny though, wasn't it?
Obstruction at a linear rate versus distance. All geometrically flat.
There are no pictures.
Right, so tune into Nathan Oakley channel. This will go out at about 10 o'clock tonight UK time if you want to make sense of why we're laughing at this. But nevertheless, I think I'm going to move it on quickly to axial rotation. Any signs of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
If you
None that
believe
I
the
could say.
pictures.
What was that, Slick? Just in the pictures?
Yeah, if you believe the pictures, sure.
I don't think they've got any pictures of it rotating though, have they? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, they've got a lot of CGI, and they claim those are pictures, so it's all the same. They just bundle them all together. It's all the same to them.
Sure, but other than
Not to
Superman
our sense.
flying
You
around
had
it.
one up on Ballbusters.
Say again, Paul?
I said you had one up on Ballbusters that you did over the weekend.
Oh yeah, but that's never going to get claimed as an actual, piece of footage. Although people probably have used it or been fooled by it. That's probably the purpose, right? Nevertheless, I'm not claiming for 1 second that the pictures I put up on Ballbusters, they were just a graphic depiction for why we wouldn't have gas pressure next to a vacuum. So maybe I should move on to that next. Any evidence that we can have gas pressure without a container for all those people who believe in the vacuum of the sky?
None whatsoever.
Nope.
Nothing happening.
I did see it on Spaceballs once. It went from suck to blow.
She's gone
but
from
maybe
suck
fair,
to
they
blow.
had a
Made.
barrier. They had a barrier. Come on,
They
literally.
did. They had a circular
Visibly
dome.
there.
They had a circular dome in
They did.
Spaceballs because the gag wouldn't make any sense. If you had Mega Maid, who's travelling through the vacuum of space, but she's a vacuum cleaner, so the gag doesn't make any sense. And obviously, you can't show the actual second law of thermodynamics violation that is gas pressure next to a vacuum. So they had to put a giant dome around the Earth for that Spaceballs gag to make sense. But anyway, any scientific evidence of gravity?
Nope.
Nothing whatsoever.
Nope.
Nope. Nope.
Evidence?
There's some
There's
people
lots
that
of
half believe
stuff.
in it.
Yeah. Well, there
There's
is a
some
lot
people
of
that
stuff.
there's some people that half believe it and they got 1 foot in and 1 foot out of it, but I won't mention any names.
I
Darwin?
like it when you say the up force.
Oh, the up force. Oh,
No.
definitely. When you pick up a set of keys, there's a magical force that takes them up into the air. It's amazing.
That's Brenda's up force, right?
Yeah, the force of Brenda. It's equally disproportionate to gravity. It's amazing. Anyway,
But there
Is
is an
that a natural
independent variable,
phenomenon?
though, Nathan. There is an independent variable, though.
what, you?
It's a bird. No,
You-
of gravity.
Well, no,
It's a
you-
bird landing.
Well, no. Well, okay. There's no person's involvement in the force of Brenda. The keys magically get their own way up to levitated positions. They do that of their own accord because of that magic Brenda force.
When you gotta say it again, he didn't hear you.
I guess so. Yeah, I said gravity. There is an independent variable for gravity, though. It's bird landing.
Oh,
remember?
bird landing, of course. That magical bird landing independent. No, that would be dependent variable. That's his observed phenomenon.
Oh, right.
So yeah,
I just observed it.
I'm
A
not
bird
even
just
gonna
landed in
try.
front of me.
that's gravity right there. That's your phenomenon. Go forth.
Nope.
Establish the cause.
You could only prove that bird landed in front of you if you take a picture.
Tumbleweed.
Or
Too
it's-
late, man.
Or
Too
it's
late.
not real, right?
Too late with the
No,
gag.
I experienced that third landing.
I just experienced it though.
Yeah, but take a picture so you can prove it.
But I don't need to prove it to myself. I just experienced it.
What about the
That's
distance to the
right,
sun?
to
Any
yourself.
evidence of the distance to the sun? Quick, let's get this over with. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
No. There
It's
is no
close.
distance to the sun.
It's close. I
Could
feel
you
it
could
too.
you back that claim up, Arwin?
I bet you can't back up the contrary.
Burden of proof reversal fallacy from Arwin. Ding, ding, ding.
Deduction.
Well, I can't prove that it is physical.
Enough said.
What
And
can
now
you
they can move.
prove?
No.
What
No,
can you
that's
prove?
not the
But it's
question. That's not the
visible, and I
question.
can
That's not the
prove that
question.
it has an
That's not the
angular
question.
relation.
Hold on. This question's changed. Can you prove there is no distance to the sun, Arwin? That's the question.
Oh, that's a complex one.
Can
Can you prove a negative like that? Is that possible?
It's your negative.
No, but it was his question.
You said that there's no distance to the sun, and I'm asking you, can you verify that?
The answer is no.
Right.
Yeah, but if the distance to the sun hasn't been measured it yet, doesn't that mean there is no distance to the sun?
He doesn't
Because
put that
Doesn't mean
caveat
anything
in.
of
He
the
doesn't
kind.
say there is no measured distance, which would be a historical documentation argument, right? So he's saying there is no accurately measured distance, but that's not what Arwin says. Arwin says there is no distance to the sun.
It depends on
Okay.
the approach. I would have to prove the holographic nature, because with holographic things and observations, it can definitely be proven that there is no distance to it, no actual distance, only an apparent distance. So I'd have to fully prove the holographic nature. Can't do that scientifically, though, without deducing or finding the source of it, and that may be just permanently elusive for me. So
Enjoying
scientifically, no,
Deductions
I can't
means the
prove it.
answer is no.
So the answer is no. Thank you.
correct.
Isn't there
Right.
a distance to holograms?
No,
I mean, it's
only
still a
apparent.
visible object.
I just want to say
Yeah,
hello
but
to our new
there's only
guest.
an
Sorry
apparent
to interrupt. Hi, Life is Short. How you doing?
Oh, hey Nathan, I'm just hanging out.
No worries. Good to have you, Travis.
Someone needs to join. Paul, I was talking to Paul on Skype, so that's the reason.
What's up, Travis?
Well, since he's on here, I'd like to ask my question, if that's okay. Maybe that'd be good for everybody to hear for my thoughts on that. Is that okay, Nathan, or do you want to move on?
No, not at all. There's no rules here. Go ahead.
Okay. For short, if you can hear me, my voice is kind of crackly, and I've already had mic issues, so there's double whammy here. I was thinking, and since you're big on perspective, I was thinking like, there's an apparent distance and apparent things going on in the atmosphere, and I was wondering if there's some way using the angular size or angular ratio or whatever on distance to be able to determine, like, there might be a true distance to an object, but figuring out what its apparent distance is using the angle calculator or angular size calculator. You understand what my question is? Because sometimes things obviously look magnified. Is there any way possible to be able to determine that you can see that's magnified? Because looking at Tim's photos yesterday, it looks like those things are magnified, but there isn't any way to maybe figure out that it is. And I know Rob Skiba did that scaling. He did it through scaling, trying to show a building and the size of the car and all that stuff. But do you think there might be some other way to do that? Just
Yeah.
thought.
So, I guess it's a complicated issue. So here, my thought is that upward refraction is kind of like an inverted prism, right? And a lot of times when you have binoculars or telescopes or things, they'll put a concave lens in front of the convex lens in order to focus the light correctly. And so I think the atmosphere is kind of acting like a biconcave lens split in half almost, such that it's just an inverted prism. And that's why the density gradient increases with height, and that would bend the light in that manner. So to answer your question is, can you ever get a true position of something? I would say you have to do a time lapse, or you have to be filming under conditions like what Red Pill had, where the air temperature and water temperature are almost ruling out refractive issues to a large extent. And so in that footage, if you go watch that footage, you'll see he's seeing miles and miles and miles, and there's just like there's no compression and expansion of the floors like he saw almost every other time he took that footage. And there's no inferior miraging or anything. It's just crystal clear conditions. So to answer your question, you have to rule out refraction. And when you're doing this stuff over water, there's almost always going to be refraction.
Well, that's what I'm kind of saying is like, could the refraction, doing the angle, even on the refractive image, determine the apparent distance? Like it could be, let's say the actual buildings in this image here, I'm not sure what the distance is, but it could be, let's say 25 miles. That's actual true buildings are 25 miles away. But because of the refraction in the atmosphere, it could show the apparent distance could be 19 miles or 18 miles. You understand what I'm saying?
Right, because
is that possible to calculate?
Closer to you by magnification or something like that, right? Is that
Right,
right?
that's kind of what I'm driving at. Is the magnification would pull the image closer to you, so it will be apparently closer to you, but it's not really.
So
Just-
my answer to
yeah,
that is
something like
not sure that it's magnification in the way that we think of it, by the use of convex and concave lensing, like through telescopes and binoculars. I think of it more in terms of having a lens into prisms, because that would make more sense to me in relation to the density gradient. Because if I think of it in terms of magnification, and I'm not ruling this out, by the way. I just can't conceptualize it as easily. But like a water droplet, like in Rob Skiba's stuff, is creating a series of lenses that you're looking through. I don't rule that out. That's certainly a possibility. But it would bring the water line up and the distant image down. And I've actually seen that too. So I'm not ruling that out. But anyway, my point is that I've conceptualized it more in terms of a prism because it makes sense to me in terms of the density gradient.
One of the
that
questions,
works. It's just some things to think about.
And we also don't see as long along the ground as we do through the upper aspect of vision.
hey, Travis,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
this is 10th man. One of the housekeeping questions is there any signs of curvature? And we all say no. Then when you look at an image through a P900 or something similar, you see the mirage or the mirroring. How do you use that to prove for curvature? When you look at it without the telephoto aspect, it's flat, and when you zoom in, you see mirages, mirroring. That doesn't change the nature of flatness.
Right. Or I thought where you were going was like if you look at Soundly's Bridge and it's obviously curved, how do you say that it's not curved? But yeah, I agree with you as far as miraging and stuff. How do you like you brought up the example the other day about the guy who was robbing the bank or something, or robbing the ATM, and you're just looking at that and one person saying, look, it's this, and then the other person sitting there going, hang on a minute, what about this thing over here? You know, how can you say that when that's going on? And I think that's kind of just what we're doing. Is they're looking at all this stuff and saying, look, curvature, and we're saying, hang on, there's definitely other things that can be going on here, and they actually seem more plausible than what you're saying.
But we have a second reference point. Water doesn't curve. Water finds its level. So can we use that?
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
Well-
So when they say there's curvature, but then water is the picture they're looking at and saying there's curvature. Yeah, but water doesn't curve. So how can you say there's curvature? We already know how water behaves.
Or Nathan's example, when they say, look, there's space, and you say, hang on a minute, how can space occur when you can't have pressure without a container?
Precisely.
Yeah, but the problem is now that they say that water can be level while being curved around a ball.
Oh, well, that's just
Please
nonsense.
show it to us.
Well, that's just nonsense. I mean, to answer, I forgot. I think it was 10th man asking the question. I can't remember if it was exactly your question or not. But either way, we're not looking in Muppet vision, are we? We're not looking at a side profile of flat water. So this water that we're looking at on screen right now, it is to the most part flat. Yes, it's flowing. So that aside, the basic principle is that it's flat, and because it's not, it's going to be flowing. So it's slightly going downhill, right? However, we've got, and you can't see in the Hangout, but for the audience's benefit, we've got water down here, and then rising up to the midpoint of this picture, we've got water up here. So what they've done is they've taken an aspect of perspective. It's a perspective hijacking calculation that lets us know we're on a sphere, or alleges that we're on a sphere. So they've taken an aspect of how a picture will present itself to you, or how your vision presents itself, with things rising up to the midpoint. Well, that's not accurate to say that's flat. It is, in terms of its physical properties. Hi, Bill Walsh. How you doing?
Hello.
Hello, good to have you. But in terms of what we are literally presented with on screen, it's not fair to say that, is it? It's rising up to the midpoint. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's where they've done the hijacking. and just taken.
And Nathan, we talked about that in that hangout too, right? Where that was the thing that clinched it for me, that this is, we don't live on a ball, was when they modeled in Muppet Vision the Earth curve calculator. And they said, this is what you're doing. You are looking down across a bulge in order to bring the bulge up to the midpoint of your vision. And then you're like, well, that's strange, because when I'm in a hallway, I know the ground isn't curved, but it's coming up to the midpoint of my vision. So how does those two things gel? And that's because, and that's when we say they didn't put perspective into Earth curve calculators, because Earth curve calculators are, in a sense, they hijack perspective. It's just a natural phenomenon for how we look at the world. The ceiling meets the floor. It's not a bulge.
And that curve calculator only looks at one frame of reference, right? I just don't know how you can get around the tilt of the supposed tilt of the Earth, and not have curvature in 360 degrees. Just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, all right. So Life is Short's ATM picture. So is the guy robbing the ATM, or did the machine just not give him his money and now he's pissed, thus hitting the machine?
No, I was just using that the other day. There was the 10th Man gave the example of if someone is looking at evidence and whether or not we can come to two different conclusions based on what we're being shown, and then, you know, is a jury or someone going to have to figure out which one they think is the more reasonable explanation. And so it was using his example from the other day. I think I forget the details of the example, but
The
Right.
details,
Right.
the example is an ATM is being robbed, but the camera is filming the whole event. There's a 6.5-foot man doing the robbing, but there's a midget 3 feet tall nearby. So it's in court now. The film is used as evidentiary. And it's clear that the midget's not robbing, it's a 6'5" guy. So the midget gets to go home and the 6'5" guy goes to jail because the camera proved it.
But in reality, we would not stop at the footage, right? We would go to the ATM and see if any transactions were made, if both of those people have an account on the machine, right? That's where we wouldn't just stop at the footage.
right,
The
it's the
footage-
way it is.
The footage
Right.
shows the 6.5 man breaking into it with an instrument of some type. That's his withdrawal code, the instrument, not a code that he punches in like everybody else.
Okay, I got a question to that. What if somebody who is right out of the frame is holding a gun to his head, demanding that he breaks in and get that money or they're going to shoot him? What about that instance?
Oh, very good. Right now, there's a unicorn looking at you to make you say that to me. What if that's true?
No further questions.
A
agree.
unicorn is not a guy with a gun off screen. You must see
That's
the
right.
point of this.
That's right. No further questions because the film is the evidence, not the guy.
That
on the
is not
side
the
with
evidence.
gun.
You can pretend like people stop at the footage because it proves your point, but that's not what happens in reality. So
I'm-
when we're looking at pictures of whoever takes pictures and we're coming up with our deductions, it would be like saying, well, the 6-foot man has a mustache, thus he looks like he would rob the machine. That's where we are at.
No, you're missing the point, and
we
you're
need to
adding
get-
things that you're missing
No,
the point.
we just need to
because-
get further
excuse me.
into this, which is where we cannot get to, which is why
No.
is it actually happening?
No, that's not the case. The case is they go to the camera across the street that shows a panorama, and there is no guy with a gun pointing at the 6'5" guy. There's more evidence. I mean, come on, I can make things up too.
Yeah, so what you're basically doing is you're steering your own hypothetical wherever direction you need for it to work for you. That's all that is.
No, you did it by bringing in the guy that wasn't there. You brought in your hypothetical with a guy with a gun. How dare you say
You're
I'm bringing it?
suffering.
Sorry, I've got to
You're
just
suffering
interrupt
from
just one
cognitive
second. Hold
dissonance.
on. Are we absolutely certain the midget is innocent?
Well, that's the short version of it. Pun intended.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I'm putting these pieces together, and as far as I'm
Wow.
concerned, it's the midget that's holding up the guy that's tall and probably got a gun under his coat, and I'd blame it on the midget.
Great, that could be the case.
And see, and this is one of the reasons why I talk about not using hypotheticals, because hypotheticals are not real. And what happens is when you play the hypothetical game, people hold you account for a hypothetical. That's why I don't like hypotheticals. This is why I only deal in reality and experience. I try to stay away from hypotheticals because they are not real.
So
Well,
now you're equating a picture to a hypothetical. How do you do that?
I'm talking about your hypothetical picture of the ATM. That's a hypothetical picture. You don't have an actual photograph that we're looking at. You're just given a description. And based off of your description, you're asking people to come up with decisions. And then if they don't come up with the right decision, they're wrong because they don't believe in photographs. My point is, it's a hypothetical. You don't have an actual photograph that we're looking at. So it's invalid.
So Slick, if I gave you a photograph or something, would you say the same thing?
Here's another hypothetical again. See, you got to stop with the hypotheticals.
No, you're equating hypotheticals to actual pictures.
Well, hey, can I ask a question real quick?
Put an actual picture up on the screen and let's examine it that way instead of your description of a picture.
Nathan, do you have a picture of inferior mirage or anything like that, or some refractive thing?
How
or
about
something?
this?
Yeah, no worries.
Look at my picture, please.
Oh, okay.
Now, Pythagoras and Anaxagoras, they say that, hey, curved surf shadow on the moon. Obviously, it has to be a round ball that casts that curved shadow. Is that a true statement? Is that their hypothesis? Can that be any other case for that assessment? I like using this.
There could be many assessments. No one's arguing that you can't have more than one viewpoint of a picture. Nathan said it perfectly. How do we know that the midget didn't have a gun under his coat pointing at the 6'5" guy? Well, the 6'5" guy who's going to jail would say, well, he had a gun on me. He would offer a defense. It would become part of the case.
Let's not go there. Let's look at this picture that I'm
Why
presenting.
not?
We can discuss
Why
it
not?
there.
No.
Because-
Why not go there?
Because other people are asking for an actual picture that we can discuss about, not a hypothetical picture.
But this is
I
you're
can give
equivocating.
you-
Hold on,
you
sorry,
can give-
just stop. We don't know what that's a picture of, and the comparison's being made to something we do know. So, if we ignore the diffraction limit for a moment and just say that we're looking out at something we do know what it is, and we can go there, we can run tape measures down the thing that we're looking at, etc., etc., etc. In the case of this, well, what is it? Don't say the moon. What is it? Right, tell me what it is.
This is a picture of a moon.
No,
and
no,
this
don't
is
say
a
the
shadow
moon.
that I'm casting
No.
with one light source.
I know. Don't say the moon. What is it? What is this a picture of? I know what we call it, the moon. What is it?
It's a shadow cast on an object.
How do you know it's a shadow?
I have to show you the object I'm casting the shadow of, which is this. So I've taken more pictures.
Gotcha. Bastard.
And so here's
That's
another
great.
shadow that's cast.
I'm glad it was
This
me
time
that
I'm
walked
showing
into
you
that.
what it is, and it's a flat disc. So I've gotten two different objects, and I'll show you here.
I don't see the problem with this. So you're presenting a photo and someone, let's say someone was like, when you had that first photo up there, like, that's the shadow of Earth on the moon. And you're like, I don't know. It could be this. What if it's this, right? I think that's all we're doing. We're just providing I don't know that that's what that is. I think it could be these other things. And how have we ruled those out,
Yeah, that's good. No facts, right? We're just trying to figure it out, which is great.
Yep, that's all I wanted to present.
So that's what I was going to say. If Nathan had an inferior mirage photo or something like that, and it was presented to Slick, right?
Okay, I'll do that
and
now.
the person says, "Hey, this is curvature of Earth. Look at the buildings are dropped behind the horizon right there." And then what do you counter back with?
I would ask for what evidence do you have of that?
They say, "Look, I can see it. The buildings are gone."
Right, but I would still ask for the evidence. How did you determine? Did you go there and see those buildings over the curb? That's what I would ask. How are you making this determination, this declaration? How are you doing that would be my question.
They say
Right.
it's
There you go.
missing. I just believe it.
So we've
And
got-
right, and that's when I explained to them that I'm not part of the belief system, because a belief can be anything. It doesn't make it a reality.
We've got
Right, but then you
Devonshire.
say,
Sorry,
or
just to
you could
interrupt.
say,
Sorry,
I
we've
don't believe that.
got Devonshire Doc Hall with a inferior mirage.
Okay, say that again now.
Somebody asked me to present something with an inferior mirage. It's on screen.
Right,
now
I was
for the
just saying
audience.
that, if we could present, and then someone's telling Slick, hey, what do you think of this? What's going on here? Why do I see something like this? Or even just that. Let's say they don't even make a claim. They're just like, what's going on here?
Yeah, and put that picture back up, please. Okay, there it is. Yeah, I would. Now, if they asked me what was going on there, I said it looks like a picture, looks like a photo.
The photograph of a trout eating something just above the
Yeah, it's
waterline.
right.
It's a giant
it's
trout.
a photograph.
You see it opening its mouth and closing its mouth. It's
All right.
a giant trout.
Yes,
Yum. Yum.
it's just a
Well-
photograph. In other words, what am I supposed to make of it?
Looks like a Zoom.
They're asking your opinion, I guess. They're just saying, hey, what's going on here? This is really weird. I keep noticing this in all my photos. I don't know what's going on.
Okay, so how do you find out what's going on?
You'd have well, I would say you need to go do a time lapse and figure out how this changes, or if it's always the case, or different days, different cameras. You'd have to do a variety of things.
Okay, so based on your experience, what is this picture telling you, and what facts can you derive from what you're looking at? Only facts, not deductions and not logic. I only want to hear
No,
any
hold on. So
facts.
I'm the guy that doesn't know in this case, and I'm asking you for your
Okay,
opinion.
don't ask me because I'm not in the photo, so you're asking the wrong guy. I don't subscribe to photos like that. They're
Okay,
just
what
pictures
if you,
to me.
What if you took this photo and then you didn't know what was going on? What would you?
It doesn't matter because I'm only into experience and reality. I'm not into photos like that. See, this photo thing is your thing. It's not mine.
Okay,
So you
I
How
can't
is that
ask.
funny?
He's not into data. He
Oh,
just
you're
wants
is
to-
that
interrupting,
funny?
Arwen. You're interrupting. So I'm not into
right.
that.
Okay.
You can ask me. You
Now,
can ask
now
me
I want
about
to
it.
I want to ask you a question, Life. What is your interpretation, since you're into photos? What facts can you tell me about this photo?
What facts? All right. Well,
Right.
then you'd have to get into what are facts. But
Listen.
I would say I have an hour on it. If you like, in short,
Just
it's
the
a-
short in other words, the short version.
The short version is that it's a total internal reflection.
I buy that.
Now you're saying that this is a fact, correct?
Yeah, it's
No.
self-evident.
That's
I mean,
all I'm asking. I'm only asking for facts, something that gets
my
a verifiable fact. That's what I'm looking for.
It's my opinion of what's going on based on.
But
the
that's
weight
not
of-
what I'm looking for.
It's
But
not an
notice I
opinion.
didn't say
Sorry,
opinion.
got to
I
interrupt.
said
No,
fact.
it's not an opinion. Self-evident fact.
I agree.
Okay, but he didn't say that. He said opinion. That's why I'm
I'll say it.
trying to get cleared up.
I'll say it. 10th man says it's a fact.
Okay, now can I ask Life a question? Life, why did you say it was an opinion?
just on the weight of evidence that I have available to me.
I know, but the other people on the panel are saying fact. Why aren't you agreeing with them and saying fact like they are?
Well, what is a fact?
But they're saying fact, so apparently they know what it is. How come you don't?
Well, that's a personal belief on whether or not we have facts or not.
Gotcha. No further questions.
Okay, good, because I don't want to go off on a
love
tangent
it.
because we're about to analyze what this picture and what it can tell us.
I believe it's a
Unless-
fact. I believe it's a fact because I have, as Slick puts it, experienced land masses. Owning a boat, I've experienced the ocean. And since I've been on land masses, they don't seem to warp or change. They're pretty stable unless there's an earthquake. And since I've been on the ocean and know how the ocean behaves under my boat, I get a good experience of that. And then I look at this picture and I say, oh, wow, it's a mirroring effect. In fact, I've seen pictures where boats are running on air, not even touching the water. It's a mirage. It's some kind of magnification. Doesn't change the actual position of the land or the water. That's a fact to me.
But when you say mirroring effect, what is that? I mean, do you have any experience in verifying what a mirroring effect is?
Yeah,
A
look
mirror
at
is
it.
just
And how did you come about that? How did you get this experience?
Right there with my eyes. I'm looking at this video picture.
No, that's not my
and
question.
I'm trying to answer your question. I see the reflection of the land going downwards into the air when it should be meeting with ocean.
That's not my question. I'm asking
what
you,
is your
how
question?
did you, where did you get, in other words, you said it's a mirroring effect. I'm asking you, where did you come upon this knowledge of knowing what a mirroring effect is? Did you study this somewhere or what?
Yes, I've experienced it. I know
I
it by
didn't say
fact.
experience. I said, did you study it? In other words, you came upon this knowledge. Did you learn it from somewhere? Did you go to school, or are you just making a determination?
No, I have a boat. Before I sold it, I would go to Catalina and I would see something like this. And then when I got closer, it wasn't like this. So
Okay, so I'm sorry.
it didn't warp in the 26 miles to that distance, depending on the conditions of the day. It presented itself as it was when I was next to it, but when I was far away, it didn't look the same. Are
Right,
you
but how
telling me
did you,
that? Well, it's obvious.
how did
Slick,
you
you're-
become
you're
an
asking-
no, hold on. How did you become an expert on mirroring effects? I'm wondering where you got knowledge of this from.
I looked
He
in the
just
mirror.
told you he experienced it
who
himself,
is-
man. Come
Who
on.
was that? Who was that? Why
That's
don't you let him
Chocolate.
answer?
Chocolate.
Well, let him answer, Chocolate. He can talk.
Okay, Chocolate's right. I experience it myself every day. I look in the mirror, and when I look at this, it's the same experience.
Okay, so what you're saying is this mirroring effect you're talking about, you're just coming up with that on your own. You didn't really actually learn about mirroring. Is that correct or not?
Why are you misrepresenting what I just said?
I'm asking. That's why I'm asking the question. I'm trying to get
I
clarity.
answered it. I said I
Oh.
came up with myself through testing and experiments that I've done by looking in the mirror, and I don't
He's
mean
gonna ask you
scientific
again.
experiments. Of
Okay,
course,
I'll
he
tell you
doesn't
what.
he doesn't
Okay,
accept beliefs.
listen. I withdraw the question.
Okay, fine. This is the point.
Alrighty.
This is the point what I'm trying to make here. I see that picture. You asked me what it was. I told you what it was, but you don't want to accept it. But you want to
Question withdrawn.
Okay.
Is there
So
any
you
point to these questions?
Well, no, that means he concedes.
Question withdrawn. You don't have
You
to
can-
read in any concession. I just withdrew the question. Thank you.
That's cowardly. Do you concede or not concede that I experienced this?
Listen, I asked you a question. Where did you get your expertise on mirroring? And you told me that is you just kind of came up with it on your own. You answered my question. That's why I was done with it.
Oh, I see. Make it up as you go.
Somebody can start a new conversation if they want. I'm all for it.
I
Certainly.
bet you are.
The thing I'm interested in is the diffraction limit, the point where things disappear into the distance and how that's been reified into the leading edge of a sphere. That bit fascinates me because when you ask people how any of these effects that they present on the globe side are occurring, they immediately reify their model and just blame it on R in every single instance. So what's causing this? Well, Earth curve. What's causing that? Well, Earth curve's causing that. Nothing's taken into consideration. Only Earth curve. And what we actually have is the very real effect of optics, perspective, angle of attack. All of the things we've been talking about for the last, 6 to 8 months. And it's ironic that we've got conspiracy cats trying to hold me to task on diffraction. I said this earlier or on the last show, I think. It was lucky yesterday because we had Bob the Science Guy come in and start to talk to us specifically about the effects of diffraction. And what is diffraction? Well, it's the point where you get interference, where you can no longer resolve, if it was a digital camera, 2 pixels for something that you can identify as being what it is as 2 pixels. When it drops down to 1 pixel and you get interference, diffraction, that is the point that it disappears into the distance. Now, as a mass scale, you've got a diffraction limit, otherwise known as the horizon, where things disappear through their angular limitation in the distance. Now, this is ironic because I find this quite amusing, being held to task on what globe heads don't yet appreciate is the edge of their sphere world, the diffraction limit. I got Life is Short on the panel, and personally, I'd like to talk about that subject.
Yeah, and what I've seen in the comments about that, and Nathan needs to define diffraction and all that stuff, is that you're not, diffraction is just a pattern. It's just, you drop a pebble in water, it's going to leave a diffraction pattern. You shine light through a slit, it's going to have a diffraction pattern. Through a circular aperture, it's going to, yield an Aries diffraction pattern. It's just, it's light through an aperture or an energy or a wave through an aperture. It creates a separate angle as it cuts across that physical obstruction. Now, the angle issue is the diffraction limit, right? That's the angular resolution limit. It's based on the Dawes limit, from which, Rayleigh took his criteria from, which is essentially what's the smallest, when you put two diffraction patterns together, what is the smallest distance between the two patterns that one says to themselves, I got two things here. There's two distinct entities here. When do I lose one of those entities? And that occurs at a certain angle. And that's the diffraction angle. That's the Rayleigh criteria for that angle. And so again, it applies to when two stars become one. It applies when one hair becomes the carpet next to it. It applies to the smallest object that we can see. And so what we've done is we've said, if we know this phenomenon exists, again, how does that relate within perspective? And so that's the argument. Small things, things get smaller with distance. We know a rough idea of how that works with convex lenses and focal points in front and behind the convex lens. We know that small things disappear. That's the Rayleigh criteria. And when we add those two things together, you can make a reasonable deduction that small things disappear with distance. And that's perspective. And the whole argument is what is a horizon? And that's, to me, the basic argument of this whole thing. Is it a physical thing that you go to and has a location, or is it an optical effect of vision? So
I must admit, after yesterday's conversation with Bob the Fallacy Guy, I thought...
I had a question for him, too, when you're done.
Sure. I thought, is there a God? For someone like Bob, who has literally reified the horizon into the leading edge of a sphere and been held to task for it, for him to come in and start talking about diffraction was just so beautiful. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, no, when he said that, sure, yeah, a small thing would disappear. Like when you can see a small bug or a small hair, it was like, wow. Because that's in physics. Like, you can go find that on physics lectures online. That's not new news, And so when he said that, you're like, huh? And that's why I wrote in your comment when you reposted that thing. I was like, they kind of just lost the debate, and they don't quite realize it yet.
Exactly. The diffraction is what you call the edge of a sphere. That limit where things can no longer be resolved is the edge of your vision. And that can be increased with aperture and apparatus. So this has been depicted loads of times, from iPhone to P900, from P900 to telescope. As you increase the aperture of the apparatus itself, you will also increase the angular resolution that you can resolve at distance, therefore effectively increasing your horizons. You can see further. Now that may be a fact. It doesn't change that there is a limit to how far you can see. Now that limit is a very real effect of perspective that has been hijacked and called Earth Curve. So I just want to make a sincere and heartfelt thanks to Conspiracy Cats. This is number 2. Hopefully we'll get a hat trick out of Conspiracy Cats. So far he's given us the gas pressure without a container argument. Without the container there can be no pressure. Now we've got Conspiracy Cats tagged quite specifically with what is diffraction. Well, isn't that nice that we can now discuss precisely where you reify R into making the diffraction limit the edge of your sphere world? Thanks to Bob, thanks to Cats, thanks also to Rory, who's going to be £5,000 lighter as a consequence of the perspective hijacking curve calculations that he assumed in his globe head way, and the arrogance that they have, that they did include this very real effect of things that are small disappearing with distance. The diffraction limit.
Okay.
Right, and they'll come
I had a
back.
question. Oh, I had a question for you because you said something. Life is short.
Sure,
You
sure,
said
sure.
reasonable. You said reasonable deduction, and I know I may have said this before, but that's the part that confuses me because water boils at 212. That's not a reasonable deduction. That's a fact. Now, I don't want to put words in Arwen's mouth, but quote me, so tell me if I'm wrong. Arwen has a reasonable deduction that gravity exists.
Okay.
So that's how valuable reasonable deductions are.
Well, I don't like this topic in general. I know it has to be talked about, but I think Nathan was hitting on it earlier when we talk about whether or not things can or can't be proven by a method, by the scientific method. So whether or not the shape of the Earth can be proven by the scientific method is a question. So
That's not what I'm talking about, though.
Excuse me, you're talking behind my back, sort of, although I'm present. But no, I do not logically deduce that gravity exists at all.
I said, correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, you're wrong.
Well, that's good.
Can
That's
I give
cleared
an
up then.
example of reasonable deduction? Can
I
give an
don't
example?
use them. I don't use them, so I can't give you one.
I said, can I? I didn't say can you. I said, can I give an example of reasonable deduction?
Yeah, I just misheard you because your mic sounds terrible. My fault.
Sorry, that's okay. I'm trying to stand up in a better position. Hey, Nathan, have you ever been to London?
Sure.
Okay. Do you know this thing that exists out there called the? Now, I've never experienced this thing at all. I've never experienced it. It's called the Clock Tower of London. Have you seen that?
The what of London?
The Clock Tower of London. The Clock Tower in London.
Sure.
Clock.
Yeah. Yeah. The tower.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never. Yeah. Okay. Now I've seen these bunch of pictures. I'll share it. Hold on a second. Let me get it pulled up here. There's all these kind of pictures online. I don't know if you've seen them, but would this represent what the clock tower looks like? Can you see my picture? Can you see my screen?
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Nathan,
Much smaller in
Okay.
real life, but yeah.
I've never experienced. Yeah, I've never experienced the clock tower except in pictures online or videos or movies. But I can reasonably assume that the clock tower exists because, for one, Nathan confirms that it exists, and two, there's also photos of it from random sources all over the place. I think it would reasonably assume that I can say that the clock tower of London exists. Would I be wrong in that assumption?
Well, this would be my question. If somebody showed you a picture of the ISS, could you reasonably assume that it's up there?
Oh, slick. That's a bit unfair. On the last show, you wouldn't let someone do that.
I'm sorry if I did something wrong there.
Well,
My
last time
apologies.
somebody tried to say this. I think it was 10th Man did the same exact thing and started to say, well, no, it's not the same with our photos when we were talking about Ranty's pictures.
No,
and then
the
compared
point that
them
I was
to-
making was, no, hold on. The point that I was making was that he said that based on that photo, he could reasonably deduce that that clock tower was there. So I'm only basing it on that. I'm not just trying to go to space. I'm just saying somebody else can show a photo of something. And do you also reasonably deduce that it's there because you saw a picture? I wasn't trying to be funny. That's my point.
It's a multiple sources question, and with locations and buildings, you can have a large amount of sources from different angles, people that don't know each other, that can confirm somehow in person that it is actually there. And
You can
when it
confirm
comes
the
to space
ISS
pictures, when it comes to
goes-
space pictures, it's only NASA. Everything goes through NASA.
No,
or
you can
the other
confirm
space
the
organizations.
ISS traversing across the moon.
Correct?
You
Thank
can
you.
confirm an object, but you don't know for sure what it is.
Yeah, this comes back to
But
my
why don't you-
argument. So
Why
I did
not
this
just
last time.
reasonably deduce it?
This comes back to what I said last time. So, in the case of Ranty's pictures or the pictures of Big Ben or any other pictures that are taken on terra firma, we can go and confirm them. We can go and check. We can double check the distances that are alleged. We can go over to the clock and touch it. We can do all of those things to verify it, and pictures are one of them. In the case of the ISS, the light that we see traversing the moon, or occulting the moon, is alleged to be in a second law of thermodynamics violation. So what they claim the light in the sky is, or more specifically where it is, can be completely thrown out, because you can't have that light in the sky traversing through a second law of thermodynamics violation. That can't possibly be the case. So the images that are given to us from the inside of that light in the sky, alleged to be in a second law of thermodynamics violation, can be debunked automatically, because you can't have pictures from a fake place. And the ISS that they show us from the inside are alleged to be in a fake place. That doesn't change the fact there's a light in the sky. In the same way as if you look at Mars, an orange dot in the sky, and they say, well, that orange dot is terra firma, like where you are. Well, there's still a light in the sky, same as the ISS. But the assertion that it's a rock in an infinitely expanding vacuum of space, that can be thrown out the window also. Doesn't change that there's an orange dot in the sky. Doesn't change that there's a dot that they call the ISS in the sky. It's the other pictures that you can debunk, because they're claimed to come from a second law of thermodynamics violation, and you can't go and take those pictures. You can take the pictures of the light from the ground, but you can't take the pictures from the second law of thermodynamics violation. And the same applies when you compare it to Ranty's pictures, the pictures of Big Ben, these pictures on screen now. If I make a claim about them, you can go and double check. You can't visit space.
Okay. Now, I got another question for you, because you said that you can verify Big Ben, correct? That's something that you can go and do. Now, you said that a second ago, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what about before you went and verified it? Can you verify it before you've done that?
No, it's a logical consistency. So because
right, so that's my point. Well, hold on. So that's my point. See, the thing that I'm trying to say is that once you go and verify it for yourself firsthand, now you verified it. But before that point, all you have is a reasonable deduction that it's there, but that doesn't guarantee it. That's my only point.
Yeah, well, that might be true. So Gary Awesome had the same argument with me and equivocated using the Eiffel Tower. So he said, look, if I'm to assert that the Eiffel Tower isn't real simply because I've been there, same argument, right? Well, no, because there's no claim that the Eiffel Tower exists in a region that can't possibly be real, like Narnia. So if they show me the lamppost in Narnia and say, well, I've never experienced this lamppost, but are you going to tell me the lamppost isn't real? Well, it exists in Narnia, a fake place. So yeah, automatically the lamppost is fake because it's claimed to be a lamppost in Narnia. Does that mean that the lamppost physically isn't real? Well, no, there might be a lamppost in existence, but there's not a lamppost in Narnia. And the same applies with the pictures from the ISS. So yes, there are pictures of men looking like they're spinning around on high wires. Sorry, my bad. Looking like they're floating in zero G. Well, those pictures do exist. Matter of fact, they are real pictures of something. Even if you say, okay, well, they're CGI render, it doesn't matter. They do exist. You can see them on a screen. But, like the lamppost, the pictures are claimed to be in a fake place. So you can automatically discount those as fake, fraud, forgery, because they're claimed to be in a fake place. But you can verify the pictures on screen, Ranty's pictures, the pictures of Big Ben, the Eiffel Tower, and it's not claimed to be in a place that violates the second law of thermodynamics. So there's no problem with the existence of Big Ben. There's no critical flaw in the fundamental premise of its existence to begin with. But there is when you start offering up pictures from a fake place, a fake medium, the vacuum of space. Right. That bit can't exist. Right. Therefore, the pictures aren't real.
That's why I moved on from that. I wasn't talking about the ISS. I had moved away from that because that wasn't a good example. I'm talking about the Big Ben picture. What I was saying was that you said that once you see the picture, you can verify Big Ben by going there and actually seeing it. Now that's verification, but before you get to that point, you can only reasonably deduce that it exists because you haven't verified it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, there's nothing wrong with. There's nothing. My point. Hold on, just let me just round that out. There's nothing wrong with reasonably deducing that the Eiffel Tower exists or Big Ben exists, or I've not been to the Taj Mahal, so I've not seen the Taj Mahal, but I can reasonably deduce that it exists, even though I've not experienced it. And there's no logical inconsistency when there's thousands of photographs and people who have been, and I've talked to people who've seen the Taj Mahal. So that's not unreasonable. But it is unreasonable to accept the pictures from space or from Narnia as being what they assert. This place, Narnia, is real because I've got a picture from it. Here's a lamppost. I've got a picture of the inside of the light in the sky that you see. Therefore, space is real. Well, no, that's not a reasonable and logical conclusion to come to. But the Big Ben one, or the Eiffel Tower one, or the Taj Mahal one, absolutely is, because there's plenty of evidence to suggest that it exists for you to make that reasonable conclusion, unlike with space.
On that note, Nathan, I reasonably deduced and believed that the tower existed, Big Ben, as well as the Eiffel Tower. And when I was in Europe, I went there and personally saw it. I went to a place where I believed it would be, but I had never been there yet. But when I got there, it verified all the pictures that logically prove it actually exists on this terra firma. And your contrast to space is beautiful because we can't go there.
I keep saying I'm not talking about space. I eliminated that a long time ago, so you don't have to keep bringing up space.
I'm talking to Nathan about his.
Well, how am I? My fault. My fault. I didn't know that.
Yeah. In fact, I have a question. We have the Leaning Tower of Pisa. We know it's on a slant. I've seen it. I've been there. Some others maybe have seen it too. Others only have seen it in the picture. Is there a way that some person in the flat Earth worldview can get to a place in distance and make that building look straight to prove the curve?
I have no idea what that's supposed to mean. So
He's saying the 1 degree every 69 miles could be applied to the Leaning Tower of Pisa.
I get it.
You could bring it back into straightness by using Earth curve to correct the slant. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I get it.
It's pretty out
there. I like that.
I like it just for the farcical nature of it. It's pretty out there.
We should do it. Someone out there should do that because you can prove the Earth is curving by being at the right angle, at the right distance, and using the curve to straighten it.
Of course, you'd have to see all the other buildings then looking slanted by comparison, which you're never going to achieve either. But it's a nice it's a nice thought experiment.
But isn't that the point? We don't see any buildings slanting over a curve.
Exactly.
Yep.
We just see the bottom up
about it,
disappearing.
but yeah.
We just see the bottom up disappearing. Just like when you put an ore in the ocean or a straw on the glass, it changes shape. Big deal. It's still straight.
And with that, I'm going to say if you're watching this on the Nathan Oakley premiering stream, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. However, if you're watching on Nathan Oakley 1980 live, this is where we bid you farewell. But I will say a massive, huge, enormous thank you to all of you for tuning in to this live debate, smashing the super chat, subscribing if you've not done so already. Also, of course, a massive thank you to all of the debating panel for making today's live debate possible. If you need something to keep you occupied after the live debate is over, then go to nathanoakley.com and check out the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
What is weight of evidence?
But see, we moved from this ISS thing and it seems to keep on coming back up. Forget about ISS. We're not talking about that at all. We're talking down here. And the only point that I'm making is this. When you showed that clock picture, until you verified it, you had a reasonable deduction, which is a belief. And beliefs didn't make that a fact until you verified it yourself. Not from somebody telling you, not from reading the thousands of pictures or the thousands of stories. Until you verify it yourself, it's a belief.
Actually, it verified my belief.
Right, but before that point, it was a belief.
No.
Until
Right,
you
right.
right. That's
Right.
what I'm saying.
No,
Right.
right. But then,
Yeah,
but then,
belief in
but then
general
you
information.
hang on. You just made the argument that I can believe it exists, and then when I go to verify it, it verifies my belief. But you say there are no beliefs.
Okay, so what happens? Okay, that's a hypothetical. What happens if somebody
No,
says,
that's
"Show"?
not a hypothetical.
That's not
Hold on,
hypothetical.
I'm giving you.
It's
I'm
not
giving you one.
hypothetical. He did it.
What if somebody shows you a picture of something, but it doesn't really exist? It's gone. But they say, here, this is a picture of something and it's over here at this place. Now, and then you believe it because you see the picture. Then you go to verify it and it's not there. Then what happens to your belief?
Well, now that's a hypothetical because when
Right.
I went to when I went to Europe, I had seen pictures of Europe in many places, magazines, videos, travel channels, and I expected to see what those video evidences showed. I believed the video, I believed the photography, the testimonies of people, even home movies from relatives who came back showing the same thing. So when I went there for the first time, it verified my belief. My belief was verified. The belief is real.
I don't get the point, but never mind.
Well, you can't because you don't believe.
Right.
You don't understand
But
what I'm
then-
saying,
but
but
then
I can't
10th
use
man,
I can't use a hypothetical because I don't like them. So
It's
That's
not.
all right.
You're labeling a hypothetical to something that's not a hypothetical.
what I'm saying is that somebody can show you a picture of something, but that
Yes.
something is no longer there. In other words, it got blown up. But before they blew it up, they showed you a picture of it. Now you can believe that that thing still exists based on the picture. Then when you go to verify it, it's blown up. So my point is your belief was not real. It was based
Okay,
on non-factual.
I got you. I got
Getting
you. So let
really
me say this.
Hey.
Let me say this.
Hey, John.
Tony.
How you doing?
Hang on. So we got Mount St. Helens, which I believe had a shape of a mountain. Then I go there and the volcano exploded, and they have in front of me in the Mount St. Helens museum, so to speak, the pictures of the mountain before and the pictures after it exploded. I go there physically after it exploded. Am I to deduct that it never looked like it did before because I didn't see it before?
That's not a good analogy that you just used.
Oh,
You
I think
used
it's a fantastic analogy.
No, but you
Because
used
I
two
wasn't-
pictures. But you used two
Right,
pictures.
right.
Right.
of
We're
the
only
same
talking one
mountain.
picture. We're talking
Okay,
one picture,
okay,
not two.
look.
Right.
Okay, watch this. Watch it. I take a picture of me when I weigh 200 pounds. I take a picture of me when I weigh 180 pounds.
But you're
What is
moving
it
the
to-
goalposts.
Okay, can I finish? If I have two pictures of me documented at different weights, and I say, this is me at 200, this is me at 180, are they both true?
You're moving the goalposts.
Answer the
We were-
question. Are they both
You're
true?
listen. I'm answered the question. You're moving the goalposts. We're not talking
not an
about two
answer to the
photos.
question.
We were
You're not
talking
answering
about.
my question. Are
If
those
you let me
photographs
talk,
true?
I will answer. If you don't be scared. We were talking about
Oh
one
my God.
photograph. We wasn't talking about two photographs where you compare a before and after. That wasn't the discussion. You changed the discussion on me.
That's
Well, one
not.
I can answer it.
photo-
I can answer it. Lose some tonnage, you big dummy.
There's Lil John. Welcome.
What's up with
What
this
about
little
Slick-
John
what about
stuff?
What's the little bit all about? I don't know how to
Well,
talk
you
on this.
remember I said you're Robin Hood. Quantum Eraser is your Lil John, and Arwen has the bow and arrow behind his.
Oh, right. The
ball.
Robin
So
Hood
this is-
analogy. I see.
Yeah, this is great.
Where'd you get this
I'm the
analogy from,
local
dude?
elf from the forest.
That's too funny. What's up, gentlemen?
I mean,
How's it going?
Sky.
Isn't all we're doing just like reasonable doubt? Like, what about like Slick if you were on a jury and they just showed you a photo, not to go back to the crime example, but you know, you got a guy, and you only have one photo, and he's the suspect sitting in front of you, and there's a knife in his hand, and then you see a victim's just a shoe, maybe. You know, it's not clear cut, but that's all you have.
Hang him.
I don't know. How do you make determinations in life? I guess if you can't use, if you have to experience everything, how, you know, you're going to say he's not guilty because I wasn't there to watch him.
I'm not going to say anything because in that instance, I don't know what's going on from that photograph. There could be somebody holding a gun to his head right outside of the frame. So I
agree, but you're now on the jury. You know what I mean? What are you going to do? You're going to say, nope, not guilty. I wasn't there.
I can't convict him on that picture. I'm sorry. I can't do it because that picture doesn't show all necessary evidence that I would need to have. Sorry.
Right. But the standard of a jury is beyond reasonable doubt.
Right. But for my reasonable doubt, you got to go beyond that.
And that's two different standards too, because juries often look at some empirical evidence, others not empirical evidence, and it's a subjective judgment. So you're talking two different standards here. Scientific evidence is very different, correct?
Right.
So it's objective, it's empirical. So watch out with this little courtroom analogy or juxtaposition, because you can get yourself into big trouble with a false equivalence fallacy.
I'm not quibbling. I'm saying they're different. I'm saying that what we're doing is not science.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm just on that subject.
We're looking at and spitballing, you know?
Because here's the situation. Let's just take this scenario. Let's take this scenario of the jury, where let's say I am sitting on a jury and I go ahead and convict this man and he gets life. And then come to find out later that he didn't do it because somebody was holding his son with a knife to his throat, making him do it. And he made a difficult choice. Look at the injustice that man got behind a photo.
Well, if that was found out, then you have a repeal. You don't have to worry about it.
That's not my point.
That's
not his point.
The information that is presented.
That's not my point. That's not my point.
But that's how juries work. They have to deal only with the information presented.
That is not my point.
Just because someone is in prison doesn't mean that person that's in prison committed the crime that they were accused for.
That should tell you volumes right there of the people exonerated that have been judged guilty, right? That should show you that the process is flawed. But that's not what Slick's talking about. You guys are going outside the realms of what he's talking about.
Well, all I'm saying is that we're looking at a photo and we are using the tools that we have to make a reasonable deduction on what is going on.
I don't know about a deduction. Be careful with that term deduction too. I think that's getting friggin' adulterated also.
An explanation.
You ain't getting an explanation.
Or
photos don't give explanations. It's just descriptions.
Sure, description.
That's another problem.
Hey, John,
I know this sounds crazy and this may sound pedantic, but you got to be real careful in the language that you use and the meanings of the terms that you use. I'm guilty of it too. I'm just saying, be real careful of the terms that you use. Thanks.
Hey, John, can I ask you a question if you can hear me?
I wanted to ask a question when it came on here. I wanted to get the discussion back to this diffraction limit stuff. I thought it was friggin' outstanding yesterday. I mean, being that it was one of the best shows in the past 3 or 4 months, I figured I'd, tread back into this area. And I'll get to your question here. Was Paul? Was that Paul that was asking that? Was that Paul that was querying me?
Kind of crackly today.
Say again?
Yes, that was me. My voice is crackly today. Yeah, that's me.
Hey, yeah, just hold on. Just hold on to that question. I had somebody said something, I can't remember who during the hangout, but I want to put this out there and let you guys think about it. The horizon isn't the or a diffraction limit. You know why? Because you can raise your elevation or adjust any number of variables and the horizon changes. Did the diameter of the aperture necessarily change?
No.
The
There you
angles
go.
at which you viewed the object or the distance changed to the aperture.
I did say this on the show. So it's not as simple as saying apply Rayleigh criterion. That's oversimplistic because you've got the atmospheric conditions, the angle of view, and the diffraction limit of the camera.
Yeah, I
It's the
thought somebody
compression of
said that the
angles
horizon
against
was
the
the
tangible.
diffraction limit. That's incorrect.
Okay, that was me. Well, I would still stand by that on account of the fact that it is the limit of where things disappear. That is the diffraction limit.
Yeah, but the diffraction limit is based on the diameter of the aperture. But I can change the horizon with a number of variables without changing the aperture or the wavelength of light.
Right,
The-
you can
the
change
thought
your
is
angle of
the
attack.
compression of-
Correct. Yes.
of
You
ray
can,
against a tangible surface. So when you lower your height, you are limiting the angles at which you can view a distant object to a narrower and narrower angle.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with that.
well, that's
I agree with that,
factors-
but that's not the diffraction limit.
Well, no, it is because you're reducing that angle, which creates that diffraction limit.
No. You got to look at. I'm going to stick with my case. My case is this: the horizon isn't the or a diffraction limit because you can raise your elevation or adjust any number of variables. Everything else being equal, the horizon changes. But the diameter of the camera, the diameter of the camera or the wavelength of light didn't change.
Okay, fine.
That's my
In that
case.
case, yes. When you put it like that, I have to agree with you because the ipso facto diffraction limit is simply based on the aperture, and it is based on the apparatus used to view. So you can't call something that is occurring based on atmospherics.
The diffraction limit is the interpretation of an observer. That's where the Dawes limit and Rayleigh criteria came from. It's the so you have to have a sensor. You have to have a retina or a photocell background to interpret the angle. So when we say diffraction limit, we're not just saying the diffraction angle through an aperture. It also has to do with the interpretation of an observer.
This diffraction angle too. That's going to add another layer of issues to this statement. I'm just going to stick with my statement, right? About my
I would agree that
camera.
diffraction angle by itself doesn't create the horizon. It's the interpretation by the observer of that angle. And that's where the criteria was taken from.
And the conditions on the day. It's always going to be all three. So it is oversimplistic to say the diffraction limit is the horizon because it's a combination of multiple things. So, okay, I'll concede, John. It's oversimplified to call it that. The reason I've done that is because I like to focus on one specific aspect. If I try every time I'm explaining that one concept, i.e. specifically the diffraction limit, and you incorporate all of the disclaimers about the atmospheric conditions, refraction, and angle of view, or foreshortening or angle of attack, whatever you want to call it, then it's just going to confuse people. You know, it's taken me long enough to understand it, so to disseminate it individually just means people will understand each particular part of it at a given stage. Does that make sense?
See, this is how you argue as an adult. Did everyone notice that?
Can I?
Does everyone on?
Yeah.
Does everyone on the panel
Shut up,
catch
John.
that?
What's your problem, you fucking idiot?
Yep.
Stop talking over. No, but
Yeah, stop
maybe
talking
there's
over
a
me. I
way
don't
to
like your
basically
tone.
get around
Arwin,
the-
stop interrupting.
But maybe there's a way
Let
around
that crayon muncher
to
talk,
determine
Arwen.
what causes the horizon, because it's so many different things. It's almost kind of corny and 90-ish, but you could just short all of the front letters of the effects that are involved and just put it together to basically say, okay, it's this, which consists of diffraction, the related perspective effect, refraction, and just make it a short of some kind.
Can't. Have you not seen one of Life is Short's presentations? There's a reason they take a long time to explain it. It's not simple.
I know.
Yeah. There's
If
a
you
variety
want
of
to reference it quickly, you can make a short out of it by combining
who-
the front letters
who-
of all the different effects involved.
Arwen, you remember Tim? Tim was on yesterday, or the day before, and he was like, "Well, which is it now? You know, oh, now it's diffraction, now it's refraction, now it's perspective." They just start throwing out terms, and the answer is like, again, weight of evidence. We found that it can be a lot of things that cause bottom up disappearance, and none of them are necessarily untrue in and of themselves.
Yeah, but it depends on the it. What is it now? Well, it depends on the context. What is the actual claim? Are you claiming that it's the object's being condensed? Are you claiming whether you could see the bottom of the building? It depends on the it, right?
Right.
It could.
Well, I personally think that it is
it could be a number of different
angle of
variables,
attack.
right? It could be a number of different explanations for the it. But you see, just talking in general like that, that's why, Tim, he's an Elmer Fudd sophist. He could barely keep his head up, right? Or breathe on his own. But when people say it, so it's now. Well, what's it? You got to define what you're talking about.
Thing.
Maybe
And whatever it is, it's never curvature.
That's
My
correct.
goodness, who's
But
that?
maybe we should narrow down what causes the effect of obstruction in the first place. It must be doable to narrow it down to one specific element that is actually causing that, while the others may influence it and the positions of it.
What's that?
I think it's the limited viewing angle that actually causes the obstruction effect in sight at a distance.
You've missed the
so
point.
you define
Sorry,
that.
let me just make it clear what John's saying to you, Arwen. So it depends specifically what you're talking about, and you've then said, well, reduced angle of view, fine. Well, what we're actually talking about is the pylons curving, Arwen.
They don't do that.
So we're talking about something else then. So there's a different set of circumstances now to talk about, as opposed to the angle. Maybe the atmospherics. Do you see where I'm going?
Well, atmospherics may displace things, but what is
Arwen, I'm not trying to argue that point with you. I'm trying to illustrate that it depends on what you're actually looking at. So we started off with Life is Short, or John, I forget who, saying Tim yesterday goes from what one thing is causing it now, because he's got R, and that's all he's got, and he'll always blame it on R. Whereas Life is Short, if you listen to one of his presentations, you'll see there's a massive amount of things that you can factor in, all of which are relevant, and not one single thing is ever going to be the cause.
Well, maybe, look, that's to get a complete picture, to get it totally correct. But the effect itself should originate probably from one of the specific elements. And I think it is the limited viewing angle that causes the effect
he's not
of
arguing that.
obstruction.
Arwen, he's not arguing that. You're correct. He's trying to give you a conceptual view when people make claims, like Timmy did. He just blanket generalized statement. Well, what is it now? And then he rattled off refraction, what else? Dirty air, a couple other things. That's not the point. Is he's generalizing and making a sweeping generalization. We're not looking for the particular effects or causes of a specific effect, but a generalization. What I'm trying to say is be very, very specific in what you say. If it's compression,
exactly what I'm doing.
and if you want to speculate
exactly
on that, that's fine. I wasn't done yet. But go ahead, just talk over me.
If we can determine exactly what causes obstruction, then the Globers, as they say, yeah, the obstruction is caused by curvature. And we can say, no, the obstruction is caused very specifically by the limited viewing angle. This effect is very narrow, very specific. There's other influences, but it is this effect that causes it. And then we have an actual backup instead of a direct claim. So it's something you can counter them directly.
But that's not true in isolation.
Can I try to summarize it for you? Let me try to summarize it real quick. So I look at it in this way. The common denominator of all this stuff is light, right? light is being received by an observer. And we know, or at least we deduce or experience, or however you want to determine it, that light can bend or have an apparent bend prior to hitting the observer aperture. And we know that it has an angle of bend after it hits the aperture. And between those two effects of that light, you can reasonably come to determinations on the things that we see without having curvature placed into the equation.
Very well
Absolutely
said.
agree.
The point being that even in that reasonably far more than I was expecting concise explanation from Life is Short, you've still got two things, optical in both instances, that have to be taken into consideration and carefully evaluated. So you've got the camera end and you've got the picture end, essentially, is what Life is Short is saying. Well, those two things aren't the cause of bottom-up obstruction or pylons curving, right? It's not that simple. What causes it in the globe, you've identified correctly, Arwin. Every time, one single cause earth curve. Well, no, none of these optics that have even been concisely detailed a moment ago by Life is Short are even considered.
Yes.
Right,
back
but
to-
my point
think a
was
lot
to
of-
be
Exactly.
very
Just
specific.
let me get back to John's point. I won't reiterate, John, as you're just about to pick it up anyway. Go ahead.
Yeah, that overall, it wasn't my point. It was just be careful when people are making claims against you or claiming something that they define the its and the that's, because each can have a different explanation, and it could be a number of different explanations that make up the whole, right? Even though that these may not be scientifically validated, I'm not talking about that. I'm just trying to get people to get more specific.
Yeah.
The
like
devil's
for-
in the details.
Yeah, for example,
And you could go ahead.
just let me give you an example. Sorry to cut you off, John. So, while I'm trying to detail Coriolis effect, I will often say it rotates underneath. Now, that is very open to interpretation. It, what? The gyroscope spins underneath? The diffraction pattern spins underneath? The Earth spins underneath? So, if you're not very specific about what it is, people can get lost in the description. So while I was doing it, I forgot where, one of the shows, or maybe on Globebusters, I can't remember, I had to start qualifying what I'm saying. And it, the Earth, rotates underneath the gyroscope. In other words, if you're not qualifying what you're leading, in that case, the person with, they're not going to be clear, or they can obfuscate it in their reply. Or they can lay a false claim at your door in terms of what you have claimed. They change the it to something else.
Exactly, precisely. And if you're talking real fast, or the other person's talking real fast, you'll lose the audience. You'll lose them. Most people lose me. I'm sitting there. Wait a second. I'm back. 4 or 5 sentences ago when you said it. What the hell is it? Right? That's all I'm saying. And my diffraction limit. I want to keep this out here. This is my case. I don't mean to stress this. Yes, I do. The horizon isn't the or a diffraction limit. And my evidence is because you can raise your elevation or any number of variables that you can adjust. The horizon changes. However, did the diameter of the cameter change?
The diameter of the cameter definitely doesn't change, no. And I'd concede on that point.
Yeah.
I'd definitely concede on that point.
I would agree with you, John. I don't agree with that.
I'm guilty of this, and it's the same when Tim Osman yesterday was talking about him rising and lowering his elevation. His question I deliberately and intentionally ignored because I want to introduce a new concept, because I've been labelling it incorrectly as angle of attack. So I want people to hear this word foreshortening. So just because I knew the timing was good to get Tim to deny it and then go and look it up, which is precisely what he did, it was a useful exercise to get that actual description of a concept into people's minds whilst having a series of images that are raising and lowering. In other words, an excellent example of foreshortening. Now, the answer to his question wasn't actually covered. So his question is why we're missing the bottom of these. Well, does foreshortening really cover that? Well, no, not really. But if I say with a load of disclaimers that it's foreshortening, however, The limited angle based on the angular resolution of the bottom section of these buildings, given the distance at 39 or whatever it was miles, you have got a limited angle of view, therefore you've got bottom of obstruction due to the Rayleigh criterion, the diffraction limit of those buildings at the bottom section due to the limited angle. But however, you're raising and lowering your camera, which is an excellent demonstration of foreshortening. Well, that probably sent half the people on the panel to sleep and lost the rest of the audience who were listening to it in total word salad. It was all correct, but so what? I just want people to hear one word: foreshortening, or diffraction limit, or refraction, or whatever aspect we're detailing in that particular instance. So it's me oversimplifying it, and I'm glad this is in the after show because it hasn't hijacked my point.
Yeah. And this foreshortening term, listen, I'm not an artist. I don't have a creative bone in my body. I'm not a photographer. I'll say very little on these subjects, but I've seen this morning 2 different definitions for foreshortening. So I don't know. Is this an artist term or a photography term? What is this?
No idea. It's new on me. It just sounds far more accurate than angle of attack.
Than angle of attack, and we all know what you mean when you're saying angle of attack, for crying out loud. But it does have a different meaning, and these crayon munchers will kung fu death grip and hold on to it. But everyone knows what we mean, right?
Sure,
I almost
right.
feel like I was
You're
looking
increasing-
it up yesterday too, actually, for foreshortening. I almost feel like what it is it's a induced effect that shouldn't really be there. In other words, if you draw a hand and it's really big in front of you, bigger than it should be within normal perspective. So it's almost like a magnification effect. That's the thing I came to. But I see what Nathan was doing was, how have you ruled out these other things? And he brings up something and he's like, oh, I don't even know what that is. But it can't be that. Well, you don't even know what it is, So anyway,
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
Yeah, exactly. It's a nice little gotcha. But ultimately speaking, it's there to contrast the fact that they've got an ultimate cause that's the same every time. It gets elaborated on with begging the question, proof of nothing, curve calculators. But ultimately speaking, it's the same cause every time. R is always the cause. Whereas in reality, you've got lots and lots of things to take into consideration, all of which are quite complicated in their own right. The diffraction limit's complicated. The angle of view is complicated. Perspective itself as a whole is complicated. And the atmospheric conditions that you are looking and observing are also complicated and infinitely variable. So there's a whole raft of things to take into account.
That's the problem. And each photograph or video is separate and unique in its own right? It's almost impossible to take in all the factors. That's just the things that you do know. What about the things that you don't know? Right. Can't account for those things. So this is where this gets back to Slick's point, doesn't it?
Yeah, this is why I was annoyed at the beginning of the first show, because Slick's got every right to put that view across and be overly critical, because
yes, he does.
That's necessary.
Yep. That's the inherent problem with photographs.
I think a problem also is when someone states something incorrectly, I can't just jut in because, for example, when you're talking about aperture, it has nothing to do with the angle. It affects the depth of field. But I'm not going to interject your entire point just to put that out there. But that's something that we should state afterwards so people can understand that it doesn't affect it.
We're not talking about aperture in terms of depth of field. We're talking about aperture in terms of the light that is bending. When it goes through the aperture, it gets bent at a certain angle, and it depends on the diameter of the aperture. And then you have to get into Young's, single slit and double slit experiments and all that stuff.
No, it's Heisenberg's uncertainty principle with diffraction.
Say that again?
Okay.
It's Heisenberg's uncertainty principle with diffraction. Look up Heisenberg's uncertainty.
Right.
Hey, Nathan, do you still got that video you could give to Life is Short with, I think it was Veritasium, that shows the the single slit diffraction.
Yeah, now you've reminded me. I did put it underneath the live show, but there's a whole bunch of other places these videos get put up, so I need to go through the others and put them in there as well, because obviously I'm saying, for example, when this goes out at 10 p.m, I'll be saying right now, check in the info box. This is going to force me to do this now, isn't it? And you'll
Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, I've got it already. I can find it on one of the live shows, but yeah, on the re-ups, it'll now be under the... I'll put it as like a default, so on every upload it has it. But yes, if you go to one of the live shows, Life is Short, on Nathan Oakley 1980, if you go to 779, the one that just went out, or 780, underneath there's a link to a video that's got Morgan Freeman in it, and it shows the double slit experiment being performed like on screen. You can actually watch it happening.
No,
Hold on a second. I'm going to snatch it, Nathan. I'm going to snatch it. Just very short video. Ah, that's the wrong one. Oh, wait a second. It's really cool, man. You'll really enjoy this.
That and Huygens principles, and I've studied a lot of that. I have a physics background. I just haven't delved into it in many years. But yeah, I love that. I think it's a diffraction of light through an aperture is a fascinating subject, and gets into wave particle duality and everything. It's a great topic, and it's a complicated topic. So.
Yeah, it's really cool, man. It's a real short video. Yeah, this is it. I'll put it in the chat for you, Nathan.
Yeah, I'll pass it on to the you guys in the Hangouts chat. Once I figure out Skype.
I think what I have a problem
real short
is when.
There you go.
Thank you.
I think what I have a problem with is when we look at something and we state something that we state the opposite and assert that it proves flat Earth. When it's, for example, diffraction limit, therefore flat Earth. I don't like that.
Me neither.
It's the same thing with ether. Ether either proves flat Earth or it proves globe Earth.
Yeah.
Well, hey,
who says that?
You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't.
Who's saying that?
Because if I give a big old long-winded explanation, then it's like, man, shut up, right? But if I say, okay, the answer is diffraction, well then, that's not good enough. So you're kind of it's why we spent, I think Nathan and I and Red Pill and Ranty spent 5 hours one night just kind of going through this. So
the thing is, we're going to have the same problems as the globe Earth is in proving our claim. The thing is, we're not basing the claim. They're basing a claim. All we have to do is point out there's more possibilities for an observation that they claim is the only possibility.
Sure. It can't be the only possibility because their claim is in fact a veiled cause and effect relationship, right?
Yes.
So they can't validate it. They haven't validated it, so it's over right there.
Right, exactly.
Right?
That's where Arwin won against Johnny Globehead, right? He just asked you for R. The cause is always R. It's a cause and effect relationship that they're asserting. What's the cause of this building obstructing? R is the cause. Earth curve is the cause. It's always the same. But we're talking at cross purposes here because, and that was a nice little link, Ibon, because yes, we have to detach what is essentially our own, for our own personal gratification, investigation into what is actually occurring versus our demolition of their claim. So when it comes to their claim, you first have to establish what exactly is it that you are claiming and then demolish that. You don't have to offer up anything in the way of explanation as a response in order to demolish their claim that R causes everything always. So that's easy to demolish, and I'm hoping as these debates progress, people in the audience pick this up too, because that's the main focus. What's being claimed? Johnny Globehead's always going to be claiming globe, and you just demolish that. Whereas moving forward, using, say, the picture on screen now to assert that you are proving flat Earth to contrast their assertion that it's a globe, that's not even necessary. And if we are going to I'm not saying we shouldn't, we just shouldn't, as Ibon puts it, be saying, well, here's my explanation for how the horizon is rising and lowering through a time lapse. Well, that's not being used as an assertion of flat Earth. It's just our novelty, if you like, our investigation into how the world we actually see works, how our eyes work, how a camera works, whatever you like. It's just our own investigation. But it's not being used as a point winning exercise against a globe head and shouldn't be used in that manner. It's a totally separate thing to the demolition of their assertion that R causes whatever we're looking at when we are studying it. We're studying it off the back of it, but it doesn't need to be used as a retort.
Like an alternative explanation to R. They
If
say
someone
this
wants
is
to
R,
accept
and
it.
what if it could be this?
Yeah,
and
if someone wants to accept the alternative explanation, but what I'm saying is, you don't say, well, it isn't a globe because of, and here's my explanation that we're actually just currently investigating, or it is actually flat because here's the diffraction limit, and I'm currently studying refraction in the atmosphere. That's a weak argument and unnecessary. Do you see what I'm saying? You can just have your own. I hate to use the word novelty, but your own pursuit of a phenomena that you perceive needs investigation. It just doesn't necessarily need to be used or offered up as a retort to a globe head argument when they reify a model. That's all I'm trying to say.
And you're always going to be up against the arrogance of the scientific community, because they're going to have, in their mind, they're way beyond what we're looking at. Well, you guys are still looking at that. We've determined that it's the R value or it's the mirage. So
No, that's not the
we're
scientific
studying
community.
galaxies right now. So
That's not the scientific
you're
community.
inferior.
That's the pseudo-scientific community.
Yeah, it's worth
so
pointing
be-
that out.
Right.
I want to stamp that out. I know you probably feel a bit hard done by as you only just piped up, Bill, but yeah.
No.
Jaren's guilty of this, and we've had the conversation, but ultimately speaking, it's going to be the same until we stamp it out. It's not science that's against us. In fact, it's on our side. Pseudo-scientists masquerading as scientists. So when people say, well, the scientific community, well, they're not. They're just not. The people who are deceiving us in this instance, the astrophysicists especially, they're not scientists. So we've just got to start labelling them as such. That's all. Sorry, I hate to hijack your point, Bill. Carry on anyway.
Yeah,
No,
before he carries
okay, go
on,
ahead.
before he carries on again with the pseudo-scientific community, if this is, I need the address, phone number, or email of this community, air quotes, okay? Because I have some questions and comments.
Bill's thinking, oh my
what
God.
I'm saying is, it's just as hard for me to break myself of that, because of the way I've been indoctrinated over the years as well. So I mean, I agree with you with your points. I mean, what I'm trying to say is, it's just not. It's so ingrained. It's so hard to break through that.
Yeah, agreed.
Can I ask my question? You can hear
No,
me?
definitely not. Paul.
No.
Get yourself a better microphone. What's your problem? Go ahead.
Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. And I think this may seem like not like a relevant question, but I think it is, because I think we've kind of been skimming around it and jumping on it periodically, but then jumping off of it. Can truth be known without the scientific method? And by what means can you come to a truth statement?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, truth can be known
explain how
without the
that's
scientific
possible.
method. The scientific method only adjudicates cause and effect relationships. Well, there's a lot more in this world than cause and effect relationships, isn't there? Right?
Yes, I can't talk, so I'm gonna let you go. I can't talk, so.
Oh, I'm done. Is it a what is question or a cause and effect question? There's a lot of what is questions that can be answered truthfully and absolutely true. There's a lot of absolute truths out there, right? So not everything's a cause and
agree.
effect
Like, I
question.
mean-
You don't need to scientifically validate. It's almost non sequitur to even query it, right?
Yeah, the problem is there's people like Spurs out there who have heard us talking about this and now assuming correctly that everything requires scientific validity, or that you can't answer a non-cause and effect question because it's not a cause and effect. Just people have got the wrong end of the stick when it comes to the reason why we're asking our opponents for scientific evidence. Well, it's because they claim they've got it.
Precisely.
That's the first reason. And the second reason is because science does actually perform a very useful function, elucidating the cause of an effect. Well, that does happen. There are cause and effect relationships, again, not to bring it immediately back to our opponents, that are being asserted. So people say the cause of this is that. Well, okay. Well, if we've got a cause and effect relationship, it would be useful to have a method. Oh, we have science. Let's apply it. Oh, it doesn't work out very well for you in your assertion about the cause of this effect. But that doesn't mean that you can look at something in the distance and not need any scientific inquiry. You can also have a phenomenon that you can't figure out the cause of. And you can have a phenomenon that you don't have a single cause for. Atmospherics, angle of incidence, Rayleigh criterion. Need I go on?
Plant growth. There's two categories also of cause and effect relationships, right? In science, we deal with natural phenomena, natural causes and effects. However, there's also man-made causes and effects, right? Right? We can establish man-made causes and effects, can't we? Who made the car? Right? We all know who made it. You know, it wasn't the wind, waves, or the laws of motion, right?
Yeah. All of the things in the car are natural things, so it's a natural car.
Yeah, right. Well, I want the pendulum theories and the bully ball laws and the toaster oven theories and the sink laws. Right?
Wait.
I
So
mean,
iPhones are natural? Is that what you're saying?
Did you get a new vanilla? Did you get a new mic or something?
Jesus Lord. The vanilla man.
Listen to that voice. That's what I'm talking. It's enchanting.
Yeah.
Are you serious? What's going on right now?
I told you. Sexy.
Don't act shocked.
Yes,
This is the third time you've been told it on this show.
Yeah, I know, but yeah, I'm using my
just so you know,
the mic on my phone instead of my Bluetooth. 'Cause I'm not at work today, so.
Yeah, we could tell from the
This is
lack of
the-
friggin' background vacuum noises, friggin' people slamming cymbals together. Thanks.
Symbols and shit. No.
Always a pleasure to have you, Chocolate. Always a pleasure.
Hey, so real quick, a serious question. I think Arwen was asking for this the other day. Nathan and maybe John can answer too. Are just a vocabulary or an agreement on terms for how we want to call whatever it is that the thing that we're doing going forward. You know, we mentioned deduction or logical deduction or reasonable you know, or not even deduction, an explanation or an illustration or what would you term thing
Depends
that we're
what it
doing?
is. Depends what it is. Sometimes it's stating the bloody obvious.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. It depends on the context and what you're talking about. Each is going to be different, right? Each photo is different because there's so many variables, right, that you can't account for. Like I said before, even even if you can account for them, even the things that you do know. Well, what about the things that you don't know?
Oh, hang on. Hold on. I just sensed something. Did you mean it's so easy to say, check out my river experiment on screen now? That's a nice, useful catch-all phrase. Is that what you were driving at?
No, not really,
Well,
but
No,
that
not
could
you,
fall
John.
into the category.
Not you, John.
Oh, sorry.
No, I think we agree that the term experiment should be used in the term of or in the context of science. So no, it's not an experiment to look at something unless you're manipulating an independent variable, right?
But was that what you were driving
think
at, or was it a side issue? What are you saying? In place of that terminology, which is so easily abused, is that your point, or am I just misreading what you were saying?
No, I guess I don't know. I'm just, you know, we get caught up in the terminology, and then I say something, and then we're saying nope, you can't say that, and it's like, all right, well, then my personal concept of what's going on, you know, I'm just trying to, I get like side rail a little bit, and I'm like, so I'd rather just know what the term is that I'm supposed to be abusing. What I've been using is just observation. You know, this is my observation, and this is my, I guess, deduction about what I think is going on in this observation. But
That's very
Yeah, it
honest.
depends on each situation, though, right? It's going to depend on each situation that comes up, whether it be a photograph, whether it be something that you're trying to illustrate. Each unique situation is going to have its inherent unique characteristics, right? So it's a generalized question, unless you're asking for something specific.
No, I guess not. I don't know.
I mean,
We'll
we're
just see
talking
how
about
as it comes up.
we're
in
talking
the
about
future, I don't know.
language, though, aren't we? I mean, there's an element of magic in terms of how you can use or abuse language, and some of it is done through nurture and society, and we don't even appreciate that we're abusing certain words and terms. So until someone pulls you up on something, you can't really know. And half the time you use or abuse a word and everyone just nods, because that's the magic of using a word incorrectly. I mean, we're focusing right at the moment on science and experiment and various other specific terms that get used incorrectly. But that's not to mean you can go around for the rest of your life in fear that you're going to say the wrong thing. That's life, isn't it? You know, there's always going to be somebody who is pedantic, and at the moment we are being just that, pedantic. But out of necessity, you know, it's because of the abuse of certain words that we end up being deceived into thinking we're on a spinning rock flying through space. So we've got a good right to be pedantic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I say the term deduction, and then we go, wait a minute, is it a deduction? And then we look up the term deduction, and then we're like, we find words like facts, and think, oh, wait a minute, what's a fact? And I
Fact
totally
is
agree
true
with
shared
with
reality.
that.
Well,
We
is
have
there
to
any
be
other
clear.
word for it that we can use?
A fact is true shared reality. That's what a fact is.
Well, just because the fact happens to pop up in that source, what other word can we use
Can't,
that
but I
that
covered this in the
describes that mechanical effect of a deduction? What the thing that you do?
if it's agreed upon,
How to figure
it becomes a fact, colloquially. I'd covered this in the show earlier. Half-life of facts. So where...
Okay.
This is complicated, so just try and bear with me.
Sorry, I thought we were talking about scientific fact
We
in
are.
this case. Sorry.
We are. So in terms of what is asserted to be a scientific fact currently in society, colloquially, however you want to call it, yeah, that is actually just what we are discussing now, i.e. logical deduction and consensus opinion, and what we all agree on is a quote-unquote fact. Well, those facts can be proven wrong. So on the show I was like, look up the half-life of facts. But those aren't scientific facts, if you want to use the same exact terminology. Those are very different. But
Right.
the hijacking of the terminology is why we are being pedantic about it when it comes to those specific words. Because they say, our opponents, let's be clear about who I'm talking about, the globeheads would say, you can't prove anything with science. It's just waiting to be falsified. Things of that type of nature. And what they're actually referring to is the pseudoscience application of logical consistency or consensus opinion or peer review or whatever they want to pull out of the hat on any given fact that they want to assert to an audience. Well, those facts have a half-life. Not scientific facts.
Right.
Exactly.
Like the fact
Facts
that
don't have
the fact that
half-lives.
we're surrounded by a vacuum. That
Yeah, but
definitely has a half-life.
the consensus was on a sphere. Everyone on this panel, correct me if I'm wrong, within the last...
It's called the gradient chocolate.
Just give it a long time frame, say for 10 years. Every one of us would have agreed on this panel that we're on a spinning ball flying through a vacuum of space. So that becomes a fact. Now, don't shudder with horror, but like all facts that aren't scientifically valid, it's got a half-life. Amazing that you can say that about being on a sphere, but we
You
all laugh
can't.
about
It's not. Facts don't have half-life because it wasn't a fact to begin with.
Correct.
Some
John likes to
Exactly.
steal my thunder. I was getting there, but thank you. Can you repeat that, John?
Facts don't have half-lives. If a fact does have a half-life, it wasn't a fact in the first place.
Right. Now, this leads us on to the whole point of me wanting to bring this conversation. Hope you're there, Slick, because this is your moment. There?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So we were talking right at the beginning of the show. What is evidence. And you said photographs aren't evidence. Just back me up that that's where we're at before I carry on.
Yeah, carry on.
Would you agree, first of all? Would you state that photographs are not evidence?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't. I would just say that I can't take a photograph and verify it to mean anything. That would be my, if I could reword it that way.
But it's one of those it is what it is kind of things. Unless you can disprove that it was evidence to begin with, in the same way John succinctly put that a fact was not a fact to begin with. The same applies with evidence. If it is evident that something is occurring, or patently obvious, or whatever you want to call it, because you've got a picture of it, then that is evidence. Self-evident by way of picture. Now, if that's forged from a fake medium, or any number of a list of things that I could give you now that means it was intentionally incorrectly presented as evidence, then that's a whole different category. Forged evidence, faked evidence, inadmissible evidence, all that sort of stuff. But it's not evidence. But a picture is absolutely evidence of whatever it is evident and whatever is self-evident in the picture. The problem only comes, and we covered this on the show also, when, let's just pick somebody random, Ranty. When Ranty says this proves flat Earth because, and then gives his deductions, his reasoning, blah, 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 blah. If it's not just self-evident in the picture, for example, a mirror layer, well, why would you assert this as fact? Well, because it's self-evident, it's in the picture. There it is. I'll point at it with my mouse. Do you know what I mean? That is absolutely evidence that there was, in the picture, a mirror layer. That's evidence of it. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Cool.
Doesn't it? Don't you have to? This is where it gets confusing because it was so general when you said it about the picture. Well, doesn't it depend on the question you're asking about the picture?
Or
Couldn't
the claim
you ask
being exactly,
50
or the
different
claim being
questions about-
made, or the claim being made about the picture was my point. Or exactly, John saying the question being asked, the claim being made, whatever's being asserted.
Right.
Right. I mean, if somebody shows you a picture, any picture, I'm not seeing the main screen, but somebody shows you a picture of an ocean with a tower in the background. Well, what's the question? Is the question, is there water there? Yeah. There's
Right.
a number of questions
Well,
that could be asked. Is the tower inverted? Is there a bird on the tower? You see what I'm saying? So what I'm trying to say, and this is a great roundup for the discussion, be hyper specific. That's
Right.
That's the lesson I wanted to point to.
Yeah, and I'll give one last example. So when I say, let's use John's example, is there a tower in the picture? Well, what's the question? Is there a tower? Well, yes, there is. It's self-evident. It's there in the picture. Well, when we're talking about what is the it, well, the it, when we're shown pictures, is Earth curve. And do we see self-evident Earth curve in the picture? Well, no, it absolutely is not self-evident. It's an assertion, it's a deduction, it's a claim being made about what the picture presents, as opposed to a self-evident truth having been photographed. Anybody got anything else to add, and then I will round out.
Nope.
Yeah,
good
that
talk.
pretty much sums it up very closely.
Earth is flat.
And with that, I will say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of today's debating panel for making this after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in the Nathan Oakley premiering stream for liking, sharing, subscribing, hopefully smashing the super chat and all that good stuff. If you need something to keep you occupied after this stream is over, then go to nathanoakley.com and check out the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!